Welcome to the Lovestead.
Hello, welcome back to Lady Lovestead Reads. My name is Jessica, and in this week's vlog, I am spending all of my free time reading. This is not a new vlog idea. This is not original. I've seen like Olivia Reads a Latte, and Mayana Reads do this kind of vlog, so this isn't anything new. But I have noticed lately I've been spending a lot of time scrolling through social media, and I don't have an issue using social media. I think that social media can be used very productively and for really good purposes. That's not how I've been using it lately. I've had a lot going on in my life that I'm trying to process emotionally and psychologically, and so I have just been scrolling, and I've averaged about 5 hours a day scrolling, and I don't have time for that. So what I'm going to do is use that time to read instead. I am still going to let myself have half an hour online, so it'd be like, 10 minutes on Discord, 10 minutes on Instagram or whatever. So like half an hour is my time limit for the day, because I do still want to check in with people. And then otherwise, my free time, I will be reading, because that's a much better use of that time. And it will be a much better way to fill my cup and take care of myself too, because I read for my mental health. Like, it really does help my mental health to be a reader. What do I consider free time? I consider free time any time that isn't spent at work, doing homework, because I am working toward a PhD, or doing chores. And honestly, sometimes doing chores, I can listen to an audiobook while I'm doing chores. So anytime outside of that, I would consider technically free time. So my plan is, like, whenever I have that free time, I'm either going to be reading physically or listening to an audiobook while I do other things. And we'll just see how much more reading I can get done, because I really haven't been able to do much reading September, October, and into November. At least not at the rate that I usually read. I usually read about 15 books a month, 12 to 15 books a month. And like lately it's been like 2 to 4 books, because I've had some major life events happening, and I've had to pick up a lot of extra work and side jobs and side hustles here and there. And rather than read when I have downtime, I've been scrolling. So we're replacing that scrolling time. Not all of it, like I said, I'm still going to give myself half an hour, but we're replacing scrolling time with reading. What am I reading, you ask? I am currently reading A Quick Bite by Lindsay Sands. This is the first book in her Argento Vampire series. So far, this reads like a rom-com. It is about Lysiana, who is a vampire that passes out at the sight of blood. And it's her birthday. And for her birthday, her vampire mother has kidnapped a handsome doctor and tied him to the bed and has been like, here, have a dinner. Enjoy your meal. But what she doesn't expect is Lysiana is like wildly attracted to this guy. So I'm about 30 pages in, and so far it's had some really funny moments. So far I find the vampire lore interesting, like sort of the mythology and the way vampires work in this world to be pretty interesting. And I am enjoying it. It was published in 2005. And you can tell because there's a little bit of fat phobia in it. There's a little bit of misogyny in it that just kind of smells like 2005. I'll just put it that way. But, on the whole, I'm having a good time with it. I'm only 36 pages in, and it's like close to 400 pages long. So this is what I'm reading physically. On audiobook, I am finishing up Wild by Cheryl Strayed as part of another blog, which you will have seen posted before this one. So you might see a little bit of overlap in these two vlogs here as we get started, which is okay. So that is what I'm reading. It is Sunday, November 20th, the week of Thanksgiving. I hope that you all get a chance to enjoy the holiday. Hopefully you're not all working through it. Hopefully you get to see the people that you want to see and do the things that you want to do and refill your cup and recharge your batteries. It's Wednesday. It's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Hopefully you get to do something that is enjoyable and that the holiday isn't too stressful for you. Monday, I did not get a lot of reading done. I was in a bad mental health space on Monday. So it was just scrolling, which honestly, I'm going to give myself some grace for that because I'm dealing with some heavy things, and sometimes you just have to do what's best for your brain in the moment. That's what I had the energy for. That's what I did. I did, however, finish Wild by Cheryl Strayed, and you will have seen me talk about that in the last vlog, so I'm not going to talk about it here, but go watch my last vlog if you want to see my thoughts on that one. This, I think I'm going to have to DNF. Yesterday, I did read about 100 pages of it, got to page 119, and the story just doesn't make any sense. So the premise of this is Lysiana is a vampire who is hemophobic, which means she's afraid of blood. She passes out at the sight of blood, but it doesn't make any sense because there's all these little rules around that situation where it's she can drink someone's blood if she bites them, but she can't drink blood out of a bag because she'll pass out. But I'm like, what's the difference? Is she sitting there staring at the blood in the bag? I mean, couldn't she by feel just put the blood in a bag in a sippy cup or something so she couldn't see it and drink it that way? And her family, who they're like, all of these vampires are squishy. They're squishy and sweet, not vampiric at all. I like my vampires to be a little dangerous, and these guys care far too much about other people's feelings to be vampires. But her family, what they do is they kidnap this psychologist who specializes in phobias, and they tie him to a bed for her birthday gift, and they're like, we kidnapped him so that he can cure you of your phobia. And all of her family is like, this phobia is awful, it's ruining her life, she could die from it. But in my head I'm like, there's a simple fix. Use a sippy cup. Use some sort of blacked out bottle. If she can drink from people when she bites them, why could she not drink from an opaque bottle of blood? It just doesn't make any sense at all. So there's that. The other thing that didn't make sense was why kidnap this doctor? Could you not have just made an appointment? Could you not have just called him up and made an appointment? Did you have to kidnap him and tie him to the bed? What was really the logic behind that other than setting this book up to be smutty to a degree? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And then the psychologist, he's tied to the bed, and all he's thinking is, wow, these are really interesting case studies. They have me tied to a bed, and they're all worried about this person's phobia. And he's psychoanalyzing the family rather than them being get me the hell out of here. There's no logic in this. It's just, and a couple things I might have been able to forgive for the sake of the story, but there was just too much that just didn't make sense. And it lost me. It lost me. The vampires were too squishy. There was no logic behind any of the decisions that were made or any of the problems that were going on. The male hero didn't make sense to me. And then there's not really a whole lot developing between the actual love story. Like, so far, it's just like, this is this family member, this is this family member. Like, it's a lot of setup. A lot of setup to be 30% of the way through the book and still not much happening, you know? This is frustrating because I bought a bunch of Lindsay Son's vampire books on a whim on a trip at Half Price Books one day. And then I've got like all these Lindsay Sands books on my shelf. When I looked on Goodreads and looked at other reviews, everybody spoke like very highly of her. I mean, maybe I'll give the other books a go and see if they get better, because this is the first book in the series. And sometimes the first book in a series is crap. So maybe I will continue and just try out the ones I have on my shelf and see if they get better. But this is a DNF and this is an unhaul. I can't. I'm sorry. Next on audiobook, I picked up Untamed by Glennon Doyle. And this is a memoir / self-help. So far I like it. I'm 30% in. And there's some really interesting concepts being covered here. Like, one thing that she's talking about is trying to peel away all of our social conditioning to be the truest version of ourselves. Another thing that she's talking about is basing all of our decisions on our relationship with our higher power. Okay, now here's the thing. I was thinking about this last night because as I was reading it, I was like, oh, wow, these are really great. Like, she's talking about how to get in touch with, like, God, whatever that means to you. And she's talking about, you know, basing your decisions that you make and on what your inner, like, spirituality is telling you to. That's the 12-step program. And I remembered her mentioning that she's, like, a raging alcoholic. Like, in her marriage, she was a raging alcoholic before she divorces her husband and she meets her future wife. Like, she was an alcoholic and she probably went through treatment and she probably was exposed at some point to the 12-step program. So she's describing as a 12-step program. I don't remember what step it is, but there's a step in there because I have taken courses in, like, addiction therapy. I'm not a therapist, but I have some background in it. I don't remember what step it is, but there's a step in there that says, like, you have to surrender your decisions to what your higher power wants. And, like, you check in with your higher power before you make any kind of decision. And that's exactly what she was talking about there. So, like, at the time that I was reading it, I was like, oh, yes, this is really good. But then last night I was reflecting on it and I was like, wait, that's just AA. So, I don't know. I don't know yet how I'm feeling about this book. I have some mixed feelings about it. I'll keep going with it though. And then the physical book I picked up was one I checked out from my library. It is a literary fiction novella called Heatwave by Victor Gestin. And I didn't know it was a work in translation, but this is a translated work. The original is in French. That makes sense to me. And I'll tell you why here in just a second. So in this book, what happens is this teen boy is birds. This teen boy, Leonard, is on vacation with his family. They're at, like, a beach resort where you can camp or you can get a bungalow. And he's out one night and he sees another teen boy hanging himself. And instead of helping him or, like, cutting him down or anything like that, he just stands there and watches him die. And he doesn't do anything. And so the rest of this book is, like, about the fallout of that decision that he made. And as I was reading it, I was like, wow, this sounds a lot and it feels a lot like L'étranger by Albert Camus. The English version of that is The Stranger by Albert Camus. And as I was reading it, I was like, wow, this is really like that. Because it's, you know, L'étranger is about this guy who murders someone on a beach and it's really hot and the sun's really shining. And this is like, he doesn't outright murder the kid, but he watches him die and it's really hot and he's on a beach. and he's kind of indifferent to the whole thing. It feels like maybe a retelling of L'étranger, but I don't know. I don't know if he was trying to do a retelling or if he unwittingly did it. I have no idea. So this author is really young. He's 26. And this is his debut novel. So I don't know. We'll see how this wraps up. But right now, it's kind of a middle of the road read for me. The beginning really gripped me. Where he was watching the kid die, like that gripped me. But since then, it's just been kind of meh. So we'll see how it wraps up. It is really short. I'm on page 30 and it's only like 120 pages. So, oh no, less than that, 104 pages. I will finish this tonight for sure. So I'll have to let you know tomorrow how it turned out. So that's the reading update. Have you heard of this or read this? I haven't heard anybody talking about it. And I'm shocked that my library had it. My library doesn't always get a lot of translated fiction, so. Hello, it is the Friday after Thanksgiving. I have my, I don't know how well you can see it, my Love on Tour shirt from that Harry Styles show back in October. I washed it with the sticker on it, so that'll come off eventually. Here's Pippi. Thanksgiving was meh. I was having a high pain day, so I just tried to keep moving as much as possible. So like, pain days are weird because either movement and staying busy helps or it does the opposite. It just whatever. And yesterday moving a lot helped. So I just kept moving a lot. I cleaned a little bit around the house. I went and did barn chores, and then I put together a bookshelf. I showed you a little bit of footage of it, not a lot, because I'm a little bit embarrassed about the state of my house right now. So just a little bit of footage of that. I would eventually like to give you like a full bookshelf tour, but that day is not today. So yeah, overall a fairly meh Thanksgiving. I am looking forward to having dinner with my mom and my brother on Sunday. I do have quite a few bookish updates for you. So the first one would be Untamed by Glennon Doyle. I finished that one. Ended up giving it 2 stars. I have so many mixed feelings about this book. Coffee creamer. Oh yes, 'tis the season. I like how on the creamer it says, "Oh yes, you pump can." Good motivator. Good motivator. Yeah, yesterday I had like a migraine, so I'm pumping myself full of caffeine today and a leave to try and get it to continue not making me non-functional. But because of the migraine, like sometimes I get nauseous and sometimes I just don't think super clearly. So if my words aren't coming to me very well right now, that is why. Alright, so Untamed by Glennon Doyle. This one ended up being a 2-star read, and I have so many mixed feelings about it. There were certain parts of this book where it really just, it rang true for me. I especially liked where she talked about the ache, which is this knowing that we have that basically everything is impermanent, and you know, the people we love won't be here forever, the animals we love won't be here forever, and just the ache that comes along with knowing that, even when they're still here, knowing they won't be here forever. Like, that really hit home with me. I really liked her discussion of finding like your inner knower, your inner God, whatever that means to you. But again, that was part of the 12 steps. It's not original, even though she doesn't note. She doesn't give credit to the 12 steps for this. It is a 12-step. And I know that she's been through the 12 steps because there's a certain part in the book where she's talking about like racial justice or something, and she brings up the 12 steps, but she never credits the 12 steps. And that really bothered me. A lot of this book bothered me. The part where she talked about racial justice felt deeply entrenched in white saviorism. It gave me the ick so bad. Like, I understand what she's trying to do. I gotta move the birds. Hang on. Sometimes those birds are so noisy I can't even think straight. So I move them into what will be my spare bedroom after the person living here moves out. So they are moved now. Okay, what was I saying? White saviorism, yeah. The part where she talks about racial justice just reeked of white saviorism, and it totally gave me the ick. And then I didn't like how it kind of rotated between being a memoir, which was good, and being lecture-y, which was not good. I also couldn't tell you why or give you any specific examples without the book in my hand because I listened to this on audiobook, but I just felt like there was a lot of narcissism entrenched in this. And I'm not saying that women can't claim space. I'm not saying that women can't pursue the things that make them happy. I'm not saying that women shouldn't put themselves first a lot of the time. But certain tonal qualities and certain statements and attitudes and assumptions made in that book just smelled like narcissism to me. And so while there were some really like glorious moments in there as I was reading it that just hit me in the heart, hit me in the feelings, there were some other pretty big like uncomfortable grossness to it as well. And it just didn't balance out to be a good final rating for the book. So I don't know. Have you read this? Let me know down below what your thoughts were on this. I was reading some of the reviews on Goodreads, and I don't want to say that I felt vindicated or whatever, but I'm noticing a lot of my black friends saying similar things about the way she talked about racial justice, and that it's a very white saviorism and not great. And I defer to their judgment absolutely on that. So yeah. Well, yeah, tell me what you think down below. If you've read this, like, am I just being hypersensitive to narcissism because I've been so exposed to it in my life? Or, like, am I reading things into this that aren't really there? Just let me know what you think if you've read this. I'm really curious to talk about this book with people. So that was Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Okay, and then the next book I finished was Heatwave by Victor Gestin. And I talked about this a little bit in my last update, how this felt like L'étranger. And I hated it. I absolutely hated this book. 1 star. How do I talk about this without getting canceled? Okay, how do I talk about this without getting flagged on YouTube? There is a group of people in the United States who identify as what they call incels, which stands for involuntary celibate. And this group of people tends to be highly misogynistic and violent. In fact, many of them end up being mass shooters. They commit acts of mass violence. And to me, this book read like a character who identified as that, as an incel. Just the overwhelming sense of entitlement to women's bodies, the reading women's every behavior as a come on, and then because there was a come on, they owed the guy sex. The absolute indifference to people suffering, to his friend hanging himself and dying, in deference to the main character's own, like, suffering, which is really stupid, whiny suffering, really self-absorbed suffering, like, it's hot, I don't like it when it's hot, and man, all these other people are having fun and I'm not, mwah. Like, this idea that the world should cater to the main character rather than the main character putting forth any kind of effing effort to get to know other people or to be a person worth liking. And now that would be okay if this book was written in a way to make all of that, like, not okay. You know what I mean? So, like, I think about Lolita. And, like, Lolita is about a terrible, terrible main character. He's a pedophile. He is a predator. But it's written in a way where you can tell the author is like, this is bad. This is not okay. That didn't happen in this. There's no sense that the author thinks that this behavior is bad. There's no, like, redeeming quality in here where the overarching message is, this is not okay. The take home of this is that the main character was somehow justified in this BS behavior. And, like, I absolutely detested this book. Absolutely detested it. And that's what I'll say about it. Moving on. The next book I read was Betty White's memoir. Much different tone than that one. So I read her book, If You Ask Me, by Betty White. It was the last book that she wrote. She wrote it in 2011. And it basically, like, covers questions that people repeatedly ask her throughout her life. Like, what's it like being in Hollywood? What's it like being, how'd you get your start in TV? What advice do you have for young actors? And she basically just goes through and answers those questions in this book. But, like, the answers were dull. So dull. And, like, she basically just talks about, like, her life and how she got into Hollywood and how grateful she is to have had the experiences that she's had, and little anecdotes here and there of interactions she's had with stars, her love of animals, little stories about animals throughout. Like, this is all stuff you can easily read online. about Betty just compiled into a book, and it's just so surface level and it's just dull. Betty White is a delight, but this book was not. So this was a 2-star read for me. I was hoping to read this to get some like really wonderful life lessons out of it, because Betty lived a very long time and she lived through some intense world events like World War I, World War II, 9/11. Like, she lived through a lot of stuff, so I was like really hoping that she might get into like what life was like during that time and what did she learn from those things and how did she become an animal lover other than just like liking animals as a kid. And like, you know, I wanted her to go there. I wanted her to go into some depth and really teach us something. But it was more just like, this is what I did. This is what I liked. This is who I talked to. And it didn't go there. Like, it just didn't. And it was a pretty short book. The audiobook was like 2 hours long. And I just was very disappointed. It was very much a letdown for me. I still love Betty White. I just didn't love that book. Okay, now I have picked up Daphne by Josh Mallerman, reading it on my Kindle. And this is a buddy read that I'm doing as part of Jan Agaton's Patreon called The Lair, reading it with all my fellow vamps in the lair. And this is about Daphne, who is like this town legend kind of, and she's like this really, really tall woman. And she's kind of like an Eddie Munson character, actually, because she's like really tall. She was into like metal bands and 80s hair band music, so she always wore dark makeup and like dressed like an 80s rock star. And like, because she's so tall, everybody's like, you've got to play basketball, you got to play basketball. She didn't want to play basketball. And the legend apparently is that a bunch of basketball players came to her house and killed her one day by shutting her in her garage and turning the car on. And then when she died, like, her face turned blue. And now she haunts the town and she goes after athletes and kills them. And the only way to avoid getting killed by the ghost of Daphne is to not think about Daphne. And as soon as you start thinking about Daphne, she's going to come after you. So this basketball team in current day, they have like the sleepover. It's a girls' basketball team. They have a sleepover, and one of the team players like tells the story of Daphne. So then all of them start thinking about Daphne, and the main character, Kit, is like especially obsessing over it. And Kit has an anxiety disorder, so there's all kinds of like talk about anxiety and how that functions in the brain and the body and what it's like to have an anxiety disorder. Because of her anxiety disorder, she's obsessing over Daphne even more and getting super, super scared and upset about it, thinking that Daphne's going to come get her because she can't stop thinking about her. So that is the premise, and that's what's going on so far. I'm about 30 pages in, and it's interesting. Daphne is definitely like a very spooky character, and I feel like the mental illness representation in this is really good, in the way that they talk about anxiety and what anxiety is like and what it feels like to live with that anxiety, and like some of the science behind it is really good. So far I'm enjoying it. I don't think it's going to be a 5-star read, but we'll see how it goes. And then on audiobook, I picked up a short memoir called I'm Afraid of Men by Vivek Shreya. I was looking through all of my Nonfiction November reads and realized, whoa, that's a lot of white people. Like, they have all been white folks so far. So now I'm trying to focus on reading people of color for Nonfiction November, and I feel like duh, Jess, why did you do that? But part of it, I'll be honest, part of it is my library. My library is where I get all my audiobooks, and whew, there's a lot of white authors, not a lot of white people of color at my library. So part of it is just I don't have access because I'm not going to pay for Audible or the other audiobook services right now. I can't. It's not my budget. So I'm working with what I have. So I did pick up I'm Afraid of Men by Vivek Shreya. I don't know a whole lot about this other than it is a memoir of a trans person, and they're a person of color. That's what I know. So this is also a pretty short one. I should be able to get through it just doing barn chores, so we'll see how that goes. And that's the update.
So I pulled this off my bookshelf. It's the Diary of Frida Kahlo, an intimate self-portrait, and it's translated by Carlos Fuentes, I believe, as well as the introduction being done. I've read this before, but it is an absolutely stunning book because it is her actual diary entries. The intro is pretty long. Here we go. So it's like her actual diary entries with drawings and artwork in it. And then they do give a translation of it all. It's just such a stunning book. And Frida, wow, those birds are excited for Frida. That's actually their namesake, Frida and Diego, named after Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera. So they're just, chiming in here. But I've been thinking about Frida Kahlo a lot lately. She has been on my mind for sure. So I'm going to give this a reread for Nonfiction November. Are you all watching the latest season of The Crown? And what do you think? Let me know down below. I think that Imelda Staunton has done a really wonderful job portraying the Queen in this season. And I don't remember her name. Debicki or something like that is her last name. The woman who plays Diana has done a really good job. Really like capturing the essence of Diana. I don't love the guy who plays Charles. Like, I don't think he's doing that well. I also don't love how this show continues to sort of vilify Charles and make Diana the victim, because Diana definitely had her issues. She had some mental illnesses, personality disorder. She was not just like an innocent victim in all the, shenanigans that happened, at least what can be verified by history. And I just get frustrated when shows always paint Charles as like this evil guy and Diana as like an innocent victim of it all, when she definitely played a role in the dysfunction of everything. Like, she wasn't just, a victim. But otherwise, I'm enjoying it. I like that they circled back to Margaret and Peter, to their story. I like that. I thought the section with the Romanovs, whew, that was brutal. But cool that they included it. I'm on episode 9, so yeah, not quite done with it, but those are my thoughts so far.
Hello. So I have a couple of books that I finished. The first is The Diary of Frida Kahlo, an intimate self-portrait. Introduction and translation by Carlos Fuentes. And this was a reread for me. It's actually a fairly quick read. It doesn't look it, but a vast majority of this is artwork that I absolutely love. And just like basically photocopies of her journal, of her diaries. And it's all in Spanish with a lot of art. And then at the end, they have a translation with commentary. So it looks like really thick and long, but it's not. And it's wonderful. I mean, the art is really the main feature of it. And then her actual journaling is more like poetry and some abstract thoughts. I mean, her thinking is even artistic and abstract, and she's just amazing. Like, Frida is such an inspiration to so many people. And I know that like so many people find her to be an important person in their lives, and I am also one of those people. She inspires me so much as a human being. Just, Yeah, so I read that, and it was a reread. Did I mention that it was a reread? I probably have like 4 times now. The other book that I finished was I'm Afraid of Men by Vivek Shraya, and this was a short memoir. I was a little concerned going into this one because I looked and saw a lot of bad reviews for it, and the reviews were primarily critiquing the theory that's used in this. But I gave this 4 stars. And yeah, there are some issues with the theory, but that's not what this book is about. This is a memoir. This is Shreya explaining her experiences. And she doesn't need to have perfect theory to share her experiences. And it focuses on her experiences with gender expression and sexuality. And it's really good. I mean, it's definitely an honest portrayal of her experiences as a trans girl, as she identifies. And I gave it 4 stars because I think it could have benefited from being a bit longer. There are some areas where I just wanted a bit more, but at the same time, I fully respect how vulnerable she's had to make herself to even put this much out there. You know, like, this is a lot of vulnerable stuff that she put into this memoir. And so, you know, while I wanted there to be more, I also respect that that is not an easy thing to do. And she doesn't owe us more. So 4 stars for that one. And if you're looking for like a fast read for Nonfiction November by a person of color, I definitely can recommend that one for you. And yeah, the other one I was reading was Daphne by Josh Mellerman, and I have not finished that, so that will roll over into the next vlog. Alrighty. Well, that's going to wrap up this vlog for you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're enjoying your month. And if you just want to let me know that you're here, leave me the art palette emoji for Frida. And until next time, make sure that you continue to read good books, drink good coffee, take care of yourselves and each other.